Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, September 10th. It's 10 o'clock here in New York, 10, 9, 8 a.m. over in Wyoming. As promised, before the morning is over, I was going to give you this week's lecture on Darwin and the Ethologists. If I sneeze, it's not COVID. My AC, I have this weird thing with ACs. I don't have allergies, yet I have allergic symptoms whenever ACs go on. Maybe that's epigenetics. What we're going to talk about today. So here we go. So today is Darwin and the Ethologists. Whenever I say that, I feel like it's a band from the 60s. So starring Darwin. He had an awesome beard. I wish I could grow a beard like Darwin. And he had a snazzy hat. So this is Darwin. We also have Bowlby. We have Lorenz with his geese, and his colleague Mary Ainsworth. And these are our theorists that we're going to be looking at today. As always, we're going to take a look at the road map. And then specifically today, it's our little 4-person band, Darwin and the Ethologists. So here we go. So a couple of things. First off, you guys told me the other night, I'm still figuring out Canvas from the instructor side. Reflection 1 and Homework 1 are both graded and posted in the grade book, so those grades are live. If you have not posted Homework 1, please do so by this evening. I would like to grade any late work tomorrow before we go into week 4. Week 4 is already posted. I did that last week, so I'm going to try to get 5 and 6 up this weekend. I always try to say I'm going to get the lectures out by the beginning of the week, and it seems like I'm always getting them out towards the end of the week. So I'm going to try to get Montessori and Werner. I'm going to try to get them out sooner than Friday or Saturday, but that's the goal. Upcoming work, Reflection 2, is going to be due on 9/18. I believe that's already been posted as well. Your first exam is going to be the following week. It's going to be due 9/25. And again, we're going to be doing the roadmap and today's ethology lectures. So the roadmap, we're up here with Darwin and evolution, Lorenz and the ethologists, Bowlby and Ainsworth. So we're on this side of the map. Every time I see this map, it looks like a little heart, but that's just me. Okay, so here we go. Let's chat about ethology. So the word ethology is a mashup between the words ethos and logia. So ethos meaning character, and logia meaning the study of. So literally, it means the study of character. But the way it hands itself out, the way that it has been brought to mean, is the study of animal and human behavior within the evolutionary context. So if we want to say behavior is similar to character, I mean, that's a little stretch there, but that's literally what ethology means. We're studying human behavior, how they act, animal and human behavior within the evolutionary context, and most importantly, within the natural setting. So how do they naturally behave in their environment? That is what the study of ethology is. It presented us with the tyranny of or. In other words, either Darwin is right or Darwin is wrong. We're going to see this later on when we talk about the Scopes monkey trial. And then Darwin is buried next to Isaac Newton. This is important to note. There's a little bit of pop culture. Darwin caused some waves when he published On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection in 1859. I believe it was 1859. I'm going to look that up while we speak. But um, he really caused some waves, and he caused a lot of waves because, yep, I thought so. 1859. He caused some waves because as late as the 1900s, the prominence of the church, especially in England, the Church of England, the Anglican Church, was very strong in England. And the prominent view, even within the scientific community, was creationism. And Darwin, as I've noted earlier, Darwin had a difficult time accepting the creation story in Genesis. And so he set out to find a natural explanation for the world around us. And that caused a lot of waves. But as time went on, he was accepted by the greater community, the greater scientific community. And the fact that he's buried next to Sir Isaac Newton is demonstrative of the British veneration of Darwin. And we're going to cover the high points of Darwin, beginning like why bother studying Darwin from an educational point of view. So as teachers or as another professional, keep in mind that all children have genetically based characteristics that make certain kinds of relationships, behaviors, accomplishment relatively easy or difficult for them. Now, one of the things that I want to point out, well, for example, the child can be genetically predisposed to be irritable or distractible, but they can learn more productive ways of responding. So to clarify here, this isn't about giving excuses for children, which oftentimes is the misinterpretation of this. Like what we're not saying is that he has an irritable personality, but you know what? He's genetically predisposed for that. That's just his nature, and therefore we're just going to leave him be. Like it's more in the sense of the way that my mom used to tell me growing up is you cannot change the spots of a leopard. You can't change the spots of a leopard. Literally, the way you can translate that is people are genetically predisposed for their personalities, and therefore you have to find ways in which to respond and navigate those genetic predispositions. We can express our confidence that no matter the child's natural abilities, they have the potential to achieve high personal standards. I know that the 45 students that I'm teaching this year have very different personalities. They have very different backgrounds. They have very different ways of expressing themselves. However, that doesn't give me an excuse to pick and choose who I'm going to teach. A basic understanding of genetic foundations can help us as teachers know where a child is at, not where we want them to be. So what's important is that when we're interacting with young people, we have to understand that we're interacting with them as they are. They're not little adults, as the pre-formationists said. They are children. And this also has implications for classroom management. When we go toe-to-toe with our kids, as I almost did this week with one of my students, I haven't done that in over 10 years, but when we go toe-to-toe with them, that's not what we mean by meeting them where they're at. If a student is challenging you, you don't challenge back because you're the adult in the room. But you have to understand how to navigate those different situations while understanding that at the end of the day, they're still kids. They're not little adults. Even if they're 17 and 18 years old, and seniors in high school, they're still children in the sense that they're in that child mindset because they haven't graduated yet. So that's that. Genes awaken, don't be surprised. Meaning that we're not talking about mutations here. We're not talking about X-Men. We're talking about genes awaken at different times. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about right now. So genetic awakening, it occurs at different times in the lifespan. There's catalyzation and non-catalyzation, not catalyzed. There's catalyzed and not catalyzed. So catalyzed genetic awakening is a tight genetic control, such as your basic motor skills. Our genes automatically turn on so that we can crawl, we can sit, we can walk. Sometimes there are issues that have to be taken care for, but the environment does not, so to speak, awaken those particular genetics. Others are more influenced by the environment. So genes that are not catalyzed are reading, writing, math, social skills, especially. But meaning this, if you have a child who was never exposed to reading, most likely they will not develop their reading skills. That their environment is going to affect it. Another way of looking at catalyzation is with illness and disease. We may be genetically predisposed for diabetes. Like my mom, for example, has type 1 diabetes. So I have a higher predisposition for type 2 because mom has type 1. Therefore, my whole life, my mom would tell my sisters and me that, be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful, because you can get type 2. I'm going to be talking about something else because while she was warning us about that, what we didn't know with science that we now know, in terms of epigenetics, excuse me, there are other factors. Some characteristics awaken during sensitive periods: perception, language, close bond to the caregiver, which is a lot of things that we're going to be talking about today. And then there's epigenetics. I gave you a little PDF here for you to look over. I was having a little difficulty at first of epigenetics because I haven't taken a bio course in many, many, many years. However, this little handout really explains it very well. And so I just want to stick here with epigenetics for a second. So what epigenetics does, stop sharing them because I want to show you this handout, a little bit of it. I don't want to take too much time with it, but come on. So epigenetics is an emerging area of scientific research that shows how environmental influences, children's experiences actually affect the expression of their genes. This means the old idea that genes are set in stone has been disproven. Nature versus nurture is no longer a debate. It's nearly always both. During development, the DNA that makes up our genes accumulates chemical marks that determine how much or little of the genes is expressed. This collection of chemical marks is known as the epigenome. The different experiences children have rearrange those chemical marks. This explains why genetically identical twins can exhibit different behavior, skills, health, and achievement. So basically, it's like we can manipulate the environment, which in turn manipulates our genes. And so, for example, what I was saying before, my mom has type 1, which science thought said that, well, I have a higher risk for type 2. What they found out is that no, you have a higher risk for any autoimmune disease. And therefore, the environment could actually, my experiences in the environment could activate things that you didn't even think were even possible. So for example, a few years ago, I went through a series of very traumatic, very stressful experiences in my life. And then I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Luckily, it's a very mild form. But the point is this: I probably would not have developed multiple sclerosis if I didn't go through those series of extremely stressful events. Now, there's no direct link that the stressful events were the causation of the multiple sclerosis. However, um, studies show that there is a correlation between high stress and the onset of multiple sclerosis. And it also pans out that after you have that initial episode of multiple sclerosis, high stress levels there on out can cause you to have the symptoms of multiple sclerosis break out. So that's just a little bit about epigenetics. The other way of I always see it this way. I'm not sure if this is 100% true in terms of my example. I'm not going to test you on this particular example, but I think about it in terms of my dad had a friend who lived on our block. He was an older gentleman, and he smoked like a smokestack. He had like 50 cigarettes a day. Whenever I saw him, he always had a cigarette in his mouth. He didn't die of lung cancer. He might have died of emphysema, but he didn't die of lung cancer. He smoked for like 60 years. He had to been smoking, if not longer. Had to be longer because he had to be like 90 when he passed away. So and I think he told us he started smoking when he was 11. So he had to be smoking like 80 years. Never developed lung cancer. Meanwhile, you could have somebody else who smokes for 20 years and develops lung cancer. So, the idea that A plus B equals C is not necessarily true. We can all have we can have predispositions, but the environment can decide when to activate it, so to speak. You could also have, for example, somebody who smokes for 15 years and then quits, and then they don't develop lung cancer 40 years later for whatever reason. So that's just an example of epigenetics. Let's go back to our presentation if I can find it. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Come back. I apologize. Come back. There it is. But now I don't have my Zoom. All right, I think I know what I have to do. I am so sorry, guys. Please forgive me. I hate because this elongates the presentation when it does not have to. Share screen. There we go. And we're back. All right. Darwin's impact on nature versus nurture. Darwin conflated animal instincts and drives with what we knew or know about human instincts and drives. So he would say, look at this bird, look at this animal, and look, it's similar things in humans. So that's how he did it. And by the very least, he got us thinking. Clearly, the human instinct for banding together, our social drives, help preserve the species nature, but with hints of nurture. Darwin is very nature based. That's why he's far on the left. But there is an understanding that nurture is involved. But then comes the development of reason, the reliance on intelligence and innovation, and this is mostly nurture because the education itself is mainly a nurturing process, and this reliance on intelligence and innovation, which separates us from the animal world. I like to talk about when we get into philosophy. I like to tell my kids, like, when was the last time that you saw a dog climb to the top of a mountain and say, what does it mean to be a dog? What is what is my life? What is the purpose of my life as a dog? And then what is my existence going to be like after I die as a dog? Like, dogs don't do that. Um, one year I had a student who was like, well, how do you know they don't think that way? Because when I've had dogs in my life, and they're really just thinking, where's my food? Can I sleep? Can I they have base their behaviors is exhibiting uh base instinctual behavior. I don't think they're having these deep uh philosophical um discussions with themselves like humans do. Um but I could be wrong. I don't know. Um Now with Darwin, what's big is this natural selection process in everything. It rewards the development of reason while the social animal furthered it by nurture. So this is where the debate would come through in Darwin of nature versus nurture. Darwin say nature, 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 nature with a little bit of nurture. But the thing is at some point, nurture kind of takes over, especially when we have the rise of civilization, banding together in cities, and the social context of things. But then Darwin would say, but natural selection, that nature coming back in, guides that process. Um, so Darwin's impact on education, um, his theory itself was groundbreaking, along with Alfred Wallace, and became fertile ground for thinking about, you know, how did we as humans come to be? What is our relationship with the divine? Does the divine exist? Like, he was really in the sense of, while agnosticism and atheism had been around for a few centuries, uh, Darwin really like broke open that conversation on a grand scale. Because even up until the late 19th century, um, everything, like, if you were going to be in science, you had to be in science through the church of some sort, whether it was the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church or things of that nature, because that's just how things were up until the late 1800s. Because natural selection applies not only to physical characteristics, but also to behavior. So it really starts this dialogue between nature versus nurture. Um, Genetic predispositions, but also how does the environment affect those genetic predispositions? And then, as I had written in the lecture notes, it brings us to the Scopes monkey trial, which this is definitively the Scopes monkey trial, which happens 50 years after Darwin's death. This is Darwin's legacy on the educational system, because evolution becomes the cornerstone, if you will, of science education. And then with the rise of STEM and the push for STEM, especially during the Cold War era after World War II, um, Darwinian evolution really becomes the cornerstone of American education, period. So, a little bit of background: John Scopes, who was a science teacher from Tennessee, tested an anti evolution teaching law. He studied evolution and was like, I want to teach this to my students. The original jury convicted Scopes for teaching evolution because it was banned in Tennessee, but the Tennessee Supreme Court overruled that decision. evolution can now be taught. So in reality, the Scopes monkey trial itself, nothing happened in the grand spectrum of things. Nothing happened. He was found guilty the first time. It was overruled later on. And so in the grand spectrum of things with John Scopes himself, nothing really happened. It is pretty much the after effects of the trial that changed everything. So now, because Tennessee, the Supreme Court overruled that lower court decision, evolution can now be taught in Tennessee. So what a lot of the more things change, the more they stay the same in the sense of how politics work. But what a lot of religious folk did back then was, well, if we can't ban evolution, we're going to mandate creationism in our education. By the 1980s, however, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that you cannot forbid evolution, as forbidding evolution would be an imposition of religion. It would be a violation of the First Amendment. However, what it came down to was you couldn't ban either. You can't ban the teaching of evolution, and you can't ban the teaching of creationism. With that said, however, evolution completely replaced creationism in the public school system and forever changed the underlying worldview of the student, especially the public school student. I would say, as somebody who is also the product of Catholic education, I mean, it's yes, you can use different textbooks in a Catholic school, but in religious based schools, they don't necessarily don't teach evolution. They for the most part they teach both. Because I remember being in Catholic schools, I had science in Catholic schools, and I learned about evolution as well. But what's interesting is that since the 1980s, technically, it's not an either or, which we're going to see on the next page. We're back to that tyranny of either or instead of both and. But really, what came out in that U.S. Supreme Court decision in the 1980s was that you have to teach, not that you have to teach, but you can teach both and. Darwin's theory of evolution completely changed the foundational premise for teaching science. Biology textbooks were rewritten, removing creationism as a premise within those textbooks. Public education transitioned from a religious foundation to a secular foundation. It really started in the 1960s when the Supreme Court struck down the Bible standard in schools. There was a Supreme Court case, I believe it was 1963, where it was said that the Bible could not be taught as a foundational text in public schools for the purpose of proselytizing religious faith. The exclusion of creationism spurred the Christian school movement, including schools like the Bob Jones College, the Pensacola Christian College, was really a result of this Scopes monkey trial. Interestingly, some public schools and universities this is particularly the last 25 years or so, this was a big debate. I remember when I was in high school. I graduated from high school in 2003. It was a big debate when I was in college from 2003 to 2007 of intelligent design. Intelligent design is kind of like mashing creationism and evolution from a both and perspective, kind of like creation science. If you ever heard of Dr. Ham, and I'm going to look Dr. Ham's name up for any of you who are curious. Dr. Ham and Bill Nye the Ken Ham, Dr. Ken Ham and Bill Nye the Science Guy had a debate a couple of years ago. I do not identify as a creation scientist, like Dr. Ham. But what was interesting about this debate was you could tell that Bill Nye didn't show up to this debate prepared for what Dr. Ham had in store to talk about. Um, Dr. Ham, I mean, while I don't necessarily agree with creation science, I'm the type of person that I will hear somebody out. I will hear somebody out no matter how ridiculous it may be. Um, the guy on that Aliens TV show on the History Channel, where his explanation for everything is it was aliens, it was aliens. I don't know. When you start watching, when you binge watch a couple of episodes, uh, he's not necessarily crazy. He's very learned. He has his information down. And I'm not saying that the answer to everything or the explanation for everything is aliens. I mean, they come up with interesting points. When it comes to intelligent design, what's interesting about intelligent design is kind of like what it's saying is that there is a intelligent framework in the universe. We may or may not call this intelligent framework God. That things were created and then things evolved from there. So that's the basic premise for intelligent design. It's as close to creationism that society will allow in a public setting. Many teachers have lost their jobs in the past for teaching intelligent design, which is interesting because it's kind of like Scopes Part 2 coming out on the other end, which I had shared with you, Inherit the Wind. I kind of want to write a play at some point, which would be like Inherit the Wind, 40 years later, where our heroic lawyer comes back to defend a teacher who taught intelligent design and see what comes of that trial. But who knows if I'll ever write that play. But yeah, again with this tyranny of war, either Darwin is right or Darwin is wrong. And if Darwin is right, then there's no other things that we can listen to. That tends to be, when it comes to Darwinian evolution, the premise of that conversation. How does this apply to working with young people? Acknowledging nature and nurture in children's lives. Well, we need to value the individual differences. Each student is genetically different. They're genetically unique. And remember that the environment and genetics influence every aspect of development. We need to encourage children to make growth promoting choices. And in essence, like, we're not victims of the environment. We are participants in the environment, and we can actually change our environment. And with epigenetics, we learn that we can even change our genetics in that process as well. With that said, when it comes to certain genetic predispositions like dyslexia, we need to consult with parents and specialists as needed. Some things are above our pay grade, so to speak. So just because, like, I'm nearsighted, I wear contacts and glasses. I can't change my vision genes, so to speak, to have 20/20 vision. So with that said, there are certain things that we need to consult the specialists, excuse me, with. And then this idea of inclusion. Oftentimes, the extreme of Darwinian evolution in terms of, oh, this is about survival of the fittest, we tend to exclude quote unquote, and I'm using this word purposely, but I'm not saying that I believe that they are, but from a societal standpoint, undesirables. So we exclude them from the general population because they have to be handled differently because their genes are different. In the extreme, we have seen it in terms of genocide throughout human history. But what we should understand is that from an educational point of view, diversity isn't a bad thing, and we need to encourage more inclusion, especially with things that we don't understand. All right. We're now going to move to Lorenz. I'm not going to spend much time on Lorenz because Crane does a really good job in the textbook. But I love Lorenz, by the way. When I remember growing up in high school biology, learning about Lorenz, I'm like, I want to be a scientist because he gets to hang out with geese, and this is just awesome. So I love Lorenz in this sense. But Lorenz, he studies geese and speculates it about humans, just like Darwin did with a variety of animals to speculate about humans. We'll see Pavlov do this with dogs. Pavlov is interesting, and he's not necessarily wrong. When bells ring in a school, there is a clear response, and we'll see that when we get to Pavlov and his dogs. Skinner starts his research out with rats and pigeons, and then later on moves to humans. But you can see that this is very ethological, where we have these theorists who work with animals and then speculate them towards humans. Excuse me. Lorenz expands on epigenetics in terms of instincts. Excuse me, I'm hiccuping. Meaning that certain instincts are released by specific external stimuli. Instincts versus reflexes. We should know the differences between the two of them. I'm not going to test you on it, but you should know that reflexes can be released by a number of stimuli. For example, the classic hammer on the knee. That's a reflex. There's an external stimuli, the hammer on the knee, and your leg kicks. You have no control over that. You can't stop your leg from kicking with that external stimuli. But that reflex is not an instinct. It's a reflex from the environment. An instinct is something that's inborn and within. And he's first to use the word schema, which is the plural for schemata. These are internal structures that develop throughout the connection of various synapses within the brain. Think of schemata. The way that I was always able to remember what these are is think of them like digital file folders in your brain. So some were born with these folders, these files, and some we develop as we grow. So the first schema is like the mother or principal caregiver folder. It's a folder. Oh, mommy. Everything dealing with mommy goes in this folder. And now in my brain, I have this mommy folder in my brain that's constantly being developed throughout my lifespan. So in a way, what's helpful, because we don't really use paper folders anymore. So if you want to think of it digitally, in fact, it's probably easier to think of it digitally. If you think of your brain like a computer, and then you have your folders and files on your computer, that's what schema and schemata are like. Think of them as critical, almost evolutionary representations of the world, encapsulated in a kind of picture, if you will. So, like, for example, that mommy folder, we have a mommy folder that constantly gets built, and from our earliest ages, we have the shape of what a mommy is. But as we go throughout our lifespan, that mommy folder is going to change. Mommy at 2 years old is not mommy at 37 years old. I don't see mommy the same way she's now mom. She's not mommy anymore. But the point is that that folder is going to change as time goes by. Lorenz saw imprinting as a projection from that picture, that scheme of the caregiver. We're going to look at imprinting in a second. And we will revisit schemata in greater detail when we get to Piaget and Carl Jung and their work. I wanted to share with you the trailer to the movie Fly Away Home. This was one of my favorite movies growing up. As I said, I loved Lorenz. I love this movie. Anything with animals. I mean, if you give me a movie with animals, I'm definitely going to watch it. But this was Fly Away Home, 1996. I was going into 6th grade. This is my childhood right here. And this is definitely a movie about imprinting. I'm not understanding why this isn't playing. Why are you not playing? Play. References to enable content. Come on. There we go. Here we go.
At 14, she came from halfway around the world to live on her father's farm.
Make it just like you remember it.
I don't
You don't what?
remember.
He was a dreamer who didn't remember what it meant to be a dad.
I'm gonna be in the shop a lot.
You're not a baby. You don't have to hold my hand.
It seemed like nothing could ever make them a family
Hi.
This is Susan. She's a friend of mine.
Excuse me.
until one day
Hey! What do you think you're doing? No!
an amazing adventure was born.
Can I keep him?
Sure.
Hey guys, Mom. Hey.
It's called imprinting. Amy was the first thing they saw when they were born, so they think she's their mother.
That one's Fluffy, and that one's Grumpy.
See, the problem with your birds is they're going to want to migrate south, and they need someone to show them how.
Come on, Geese! Come on, Geese!
They were orphans
Put them down.
All domestically raised geese have to be rendered flightless.
No! What are you doing?
Stay off of my place!
who needed a mother to teach them.
You gotta feed them every 2 hours, and you're not allowed to put them outside.
Amy,
Are you sure you can handle this?
And a father to show them the way.
suppose I built an aircraft and then taught Amy how to fly it.
It's a great idea. You know, birds follow me, I follow you. We all go south.
Together, they charted a course,
Let's go to the right. It's all you, Amy.
tested their wings, and took to the skies. From the director of The Black Stallion
Come in, Mama Goose.
Hello, Papa Goose.
comes an incredible journey for anyone who's ever had a dream
Dad, they're really flying with me.
and the courage to make it fly. Jeff Daniels, Academy Award winner Anna Paquin, Fly Away Home.
You want a good Saturday afternoon feel good movie? Fly Away Home is definitely a good pick. I think the added bonus to this movie is that it's based on a true story. So if you want to watch a movie that's I really like true story movies, but that's Fly Away Home. And as I said before, it was actually a movie when I was in middle school and high school. I watched it when I had biology in middle school, and then our biology teacher showed it to us again when we were in high school. So it's definitely been a staple in terms of teaching about imprinting. Bowlby. So why do we Bowlby? Bowlby said that we can understand human behavior only by considering its environment of adaptedness. One of the things I forgot to bring up about Darwin was that Darwin is all about adaptation. Survival of the fittest is not about the strongest, but the individual species that yes, the individual species. No, species is the group. The individuals, specimens. I'm sorry, the individuals within a species, who are at the greatest, who are set up, who have adapted the most to survive. So in this environment of adaptedness, the basic environment in which the child evolved. So for Bowlby, where he is, he's studying baby ethology. That's what he's studying. How do we study the child in its natural environment? And that environment is touching, smiles, babbling, food, suckling. How does that baby develop within that environment? Bowlby also argued that as a project of evolution, the human child has an instinctual need to stay close to the parent on whom he or she has imprinted. So just like Lorenz talks about the imprinting of geese, Bowlby takes it schema, he takes it further to talk about how do humans imprint, because humans have their own process of imprinting, slightly different from geese. On some level, the child may sometimes feel that losing contact with the parent means that the child will die, and we're gonna because the child sees everything as an extension of themselves to until a certain point in age. So when they latch on to the caregiver, when the caregiver leaves, a part of them is leaving. So that's why the child can become hysterical when the caregiver leaves the room. It may not be so much that they miss the parent, but they've attached themselves to that individual as an extension of who they are. And um, this can also really explain on the other end of life, when the caregiver passes away, we often see the adult child regress back to a certain extent into a childlike manner, because there is that attachment to the caregiver. And when the caregiver dies, a part of the child has passed away as well. So that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that's the explanation for attachment on the other end of life. The reciprocal feedback loop: when the baby smiles, the caregiver smiles, the baby smiles more, and we have this mirroring. And the mirroring also maintains proximity to the caregiver. The baby learns very quickly. If I smile, mommy and daddy will smile. They will come back to me, and they will see me, and they will stay with me. It reinforces it. It reminds the baby, but they're mine. they're mine, and they're gonna stay. And it also helps build empathy, because just as we smile, we also frown. And when we see others frown, we know what they're feeling when they're feeling that way. This also happens when we watch movies, and we feel all of these different emotions when we watch movies, even though we're not experiencing the same experiences. We've experienced similar experiences, and we empathize with the characters. Bowlby also coins the term separation anxiety. At about 6 months to 3 years, the infant's attachment to the particular caregiver becomes increasingly intense and exclusive. They cry when mom leaves the room, for example. That crying is what Bowlby identified it as anxiety. So caregiver leaves, separation, crying, anxiety. That's where we get separation anxiety. But then it also fear of strangers. So if the caregiver leaves, the child is already put ill at ease. And then when a stranger enters, not mommy, you can think, if any of you have ever seen Dinosaurs, there's the TV show, you can watch it on Disney Plus. It was a Disney show. It was a ABC Channel 7 in New York. It was an ABC show um, from parent company Disney about dinosaurs. When you watch it as an adult, you start to appreciate the social satire in the show, but it was about dinosaurs and the baby dinosaur. His name was Baby Dinosaur. He would smack the father dinosaur, and he would say, "Not the mama, not the mama, not the mama." But the baby sees mommy, 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 no mommy. Oh my God, where's mommy? Stranger, not mommy. Stranger danger, and fear ensues because of it. We also get goal corrected systemization. This begins when the child can start to crawl. So when the baby starts to crawl, it's not so much about simply becoming mobile. It's about finding that caregiver, usually mom, because that's that attachment, especially being inside mom for 9 months. There's that attachment to mom. But what happens is that when mom leaves, now I can crawl. So mommy's leaving, I can follow her. So that's that goal corrected systemization. My goal, the baby goal, is to be with the caregiver. Caregiver leaves the room, I'm going to follow the caregiver. That's that goal corrected systemization. Babies monitor where mom is at and then correct where they are at to where mom is at, or whichever caregiver they are attached to. Then we get to secure base attachment. Bowlby starts it, Ainsworth finishes it. This happens between 1 to 2 years. The idea that mom seems to always come back. So if I am in close proximity, I can begin to explore, knowing that I have a secure base to which I can return. This leads to the so-called working model, the archetype of mom, the beginnings of object permanence. This idea is the fact of no longer does the baby think, mommy gone, oh my God, what am I going to do? What I'm going to do? Am I going to die? It's mommy gone, mommy will come back. I'm okay right now. Again, and then the secure base of exploration. Mommy's there. I'm going to be okay. I can go out into the world. Now, that's from a baby's point of view. This also manifests itself as an adult. Many of you may be, especially if you are traditional students, you may be 17 or 18, going off to college, dorming on campus. You've lived your entire childhood with your parent, most likely mom, but with your parent, your caregiver, your guardian, and now you're going off to college, but there's this secure base. You can always go back. And now you can explore into the world. And you have this, that you can always go back because of this object permanence. That schema that's been developed in your head, the mommy folder in your brain, mommy's there. Mommy's always going to be there, and everything's going to be okay. And as I said before, this also manifests itself on the other end of life. When the caregiver passes away, this object permanence is important, because when the physical body is gone, all we have now are our memories. We have that mommy folder, our schema, to help us process the grief of losing that caregiver on the other end, because we'll always have that attachment to our caregiver. Bowlby's work stopped at the end of childhood. He had little to say about attachments after childhood ended. When does childhood end? For Bowlby, it's probably around kindergarten, but definitely somewhere in elementary or middle school. I would probably say, personally, childhood probably ends the end of high school, college. Maybe that's more of a modern society thing. Others will say 7th or 8th grade, because then you have the start of adolescence. Me personally, this is Michael speaking, not Professor Ginobili. But Michael speaking, I think adolescence is a part of childhood, but that's just me. Adolescents break away from parental dominance, but nevertheless retain the archetypes and then spend the rest of their lives finding stand-ins. The old joke is the kids spend 9 months trying to get out, and then the rest of their lives trying to get back in, meaning that we do all of this development as unborn children. We come out into the world, and then we develop this idea of what the world is, and then we realize, oh my god, this world is so chaotic. I want to go back to that time of security inside mommy's womb. That's kind of like what the old joke is, because at least in the womb there was a sense of safety inside of the womb, and that this world is so chaotic. Why would I want to live out here? But of course we realize it's not as bad as it actually it's not as bad as it seems. Now we have Ainsworth. Ainsworth looked at how ordinary child rearing might vary in degree to which it promotes healthy attachment. So, what is healthy attachment? First, it's the infant developing a sense that the caregiver will be there when they need them. It's the caregiver is consistent, responsive, sensitive. Secondly, the caregiver will be there when returning from exploration, that secure base. Thirdly, the caregiver will never reject them. That's extremely important. If the caregiver rejects the child, we got a bunch of problems that are going to manifest themselves. So one can see how child rearing and parenting style can impact attachment. There's definitively 3 models. I think the textbook talks about a 4th, but the 3 that you need to know is the secure attachment, which is promoted by sensitive and responsive parenting. This is the best out of all 3. Majority of children experience this because while parents aren't perfect, majority of parents aren't bad parents. If we're going to be honest. Insecure avoidant attachment is promoted by relatively insensitive, rejecting parenting. Babies learn to fend for themselves and avoid trying to attach. Insecure ambivalent attachment is promoted by inconsistent parenting, warm and considerate sometimes, but not every time. So there's some speculation that this is part of the development of borderline personality disorder. Now, how might this manifest itself? How might these attachment issues manifest themselves in adolescence? Because the textbook focuses on children. As we said, Bowlby focuses on children. Ainsworth is a little bit after. I'm a high school teacher, so I'm like, well, how does attachment issues manifest themselves in adolescence? I think Sean Hunter is a great example of this. This is from my favorite show growing up, Boy Meets World. I saw this montage. I hope you enjoy it. So when you're thinking about this, what I'm trying to share here is if the child is brought up to have attachment issues, how might this manifest itself when that child becomes an adolescent?
A cool dog. I see it down by the corner.
He's all alone, man. No home, no family, nothing. Yeah, I know what he's going through. I've been there. Don't you see?
A mild-mannered youth until 7th grade, Sean realized he was nothing but trailer trash, so he blew up the entire school.
Look, I just think you're gonna have a problem if you hang out with guys like that.
What's with you, Hunter? Why you want to hang out with these lowlifes?
Maybe I'm a low life too, okay?
Yeah, well, they happen to be my kind of guys. Okay, we're part of the same circle.
Look, Sean, look at where I live. Look at your parents. Look at my parents. I know where I'm gonna end up. Just let me get there now.
Sean!
Just let me get there now.
My guess, Corey, is he's really not mad at you.
Yeah, then why is he acting like this?
I don't know for sure, but sometimes people can push you away just when they need you the most.
They must really need me. Look, if you belong here, then I belong here.
I don't know anything. I don't even know who I am. Corey, people like me, we don't go anywhere because we don't believe that we can get there. People like me don't go to college.
Do your assignments, Mr. Hunter, and you'll go to college.
And if I get in, how am I supposed to afford it, huh? There's just so many things standing in the way. Whenever I've wanted anything in my life, there's always been an Eskimo standing in my way. I'm my own worst Eskimo. I was thinking about how much this place has been my home. That's what I wrote. That's how I feel. I'm at war with myself. Why am I like I am? I'm not normal. I mean, what if I'm incapable of loving somebody? What if I can't do that?
Sean, that's crazy.
No, it's not. Not for me. Always do this over and over and over again. You come into town, you make all these promises, and just when I think we're actually going to get close, you take off again. Oh my God. I'm you.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the fact that I can't keep a relationship. I drive all my friends away. I hurt everybody I care about.
I'm screwed up. I come watching myself do these things that I hate, and I can't stop them. I need you, Dad. I need you.
When I took off in my dad's trailer, I had a moment, just one moment, that made everything completely clear for me. I was looking at the night sky, and I could see everything. Stars, planets, galaxies.
You must have felt so small.
I did. I totally did. I felt like a speck who was here for one moment in time and then gone. And I decided that while I'm here, I want to be with my friends and the people I love. Because when I'm with you guys, I don't feel that small. That's what I figured out. Very cool, dog.
I'm going to touch upon that a little bit more after we get to the parenting styles. And even though these are parenting styles, these are also teaching styles. So, so there's 4 types of parenting styles. There's the authoritative, affectionate, responsive, promote, age appropriate, communicate high expectations, assert authority when needed, give reasons why, and they consider the child when setting rules. It's characterized by warmth and nurturing of a child's autonomy. It can lead to precociousness, large egos, overachievement. There's the authoritarian style, demanding of immediate compliance, conditional love, little context, do it because I said so, no chance for negotiation. It's harsh, it's rigid, no concern for the autonomy of the child. It can lead to children who withdraw, mistrust, unhappy, low self esteem. Bullying can result, but it's highly adaptive in toxic environments, high crime areas, etc. The permissive style, parents assert little control over the kids. The parents care, but they relinquish decision making to the children themselves. No chores, no curfews, basically no rules. Nevertheless, the family environment can be exceedingly warm and inclusive. Children can be responded to with care and acceptance, almost as if the parents see the kids as friends rather than children to be raised. You will see it in children who are aggressive, do poorly on academic activities, and engage in delinquent acts. Then there's the uninvolved parent. It begins with permissiveness and evolves downward. Out the window goes care, acceptance, and warmth. It's seen in drug-addled households, single parents who themselves were products of uninvolved parents, etc. Children will likely develop an impulse control problems, LFT, delinquency, crime, etc. Overall, is not good, but somewhat rare in most circumstances. But you're going to see these 4 the products of these 4 parenting styles in your classrooms. And you're also going to see the product of these 4 teaching styles in other classrooms as well. Moving on, the relevance. So watch for attachment issues in your students and patients if you're in counseling. Eventually your own children, if you're lucky enough to have them. Know that separation anxiety can last a lifetime. Just do not judge. Some of your problem children are children with separation anxiety. And they're going to want to affiliate. These are the kids who are going to want to hang out with you during lunch. They're going to hang around during after school because they don't have a parental figure and they're going to attach to you. Now, there's a fine line here. It's a blessing and a curse. because it can also get you in trouble in certain areas later on down the line. But with that said, most often, if you're aware of the situation and you're aware of everything that's going on, 99 times out of 100, you're going to be perfectly fine and okay. Here's what I mean. So early on in my career, I'm a very warm, I'm a very connecting type of a teacher. And oftentimes, not even thinking about it, I'd have students hanging out in my room with the lights off because you forget to turn the lights on. You think it's something that's fine and okay. There's nothing wrong. I did have mentors come to me like you have to make sure your doors are open and your lights are on. Not saying that you don't trust the kids, but you don't know what kids are going to say. So just be mindful of that because they're going to want to stay around with you. This can impact how they engage with the learning. How does that, what do I mean by that? I'm going to say, especially as a male teacher, I'm coming from the point of view of a male teacher, because majority of your teachers are female, and majority of your female teachers are naturally nurturing. That studies just show that. Studies just show that females in general are just naturally more nurturing than men. That's just what studies show. As a male teacher, it's a blessing and a curse. The reason for that is because you're going to have a lot of students, especially if you work in more urban areas, coming from single parent households that are mainly single moms. And students are going to attach to you because they're searching for male role models. That's I, it's just how it is for many reasons. I'll give you an example. This year in particular, I have a 9th grade student who was always the class clown in 8th grade. I didn't teach him last year in 8th grade. But I've had run-ins with him over the last few years, especially when I was the department lead for English. I know who the kid is. I saw him during summer school, started having conversations with him. Mom is checked out, right? Mom isn't around all that much. Mom has a boyfriend who is not involved in his life. Dad left when he was a kid. He affiliates with me because I've shown him positive attention. So he sees me as a male role model. And now I have a responsibility in the sense of I can reject him just like everybody else has rejected him, and he's not going to know the difference. But if I don't reject him and I take him under my wing and I mentor him, it can break the cycle because he was in summer school. He may engage with the learning this year simply because he had somebody who engaged with him, didn't reject him, and didn't dismiss him as a problem child. So just be mindful that most problem children aren't really problem children. And I'll be 100% honest with you. I've never met a problem child before. There are difficult children who will push your buttons and test you, but you're the adult in the room. And if you think of it this way, there's a reason why group of children are being put in front of you. And it's your job as a teacher to connect with them. And I'll just leave it at that without getting on my soapbox and starting to get preachy, because I'm very passionate about this aspect of education. We call it in loco parentis, where you are in essence the proxy adult, the proxy caregiver. And legally, that's true. In education, you are the legal guardian in terms of welfare of the child, but it's also the mental, physical, and emotional welfare of the child, and not simply the physical welfare of the child. And I could go on and on about this, but I'm not. I don't even know how long this video is already, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. This brings us to week 4. Read chapters 4 and 5. We're gonna look at Montessori and Vernon. I'm kind of curious about Montessori. There is a Montessori school up the block from where I live. I may go in there and ask them some things just to see if I can get a little bit more insight after reading the chapter on Montessori. It's called the Yonkers Montessori School. That's up the block from me. Reflection 2 is due 9/18. That's next Sunday. But yeah. So some recommendations. Fly Away Home. I would definitely watch Fly Away Home if you've never heard of it. It's such a feel-good movie. If you want to learn about imprinting from a movie. Boy Meets World. That's a TV series that's going to take you a couple of weeks to get through. Definitely a great one. Everybody thinks it's about Corey Matthews. My fan theory is that Boy Meets World is actually about Sean Hunter. That's my fan theory. Is that Boy Meets World is actually about Sean Hunter. Sean Hunter's the main character, not Corey. But again, that's just me. When I was looking through this chapter this week, especially with like Bowlby and Ainsworth, Look Who's Talking is a movie from 1989. It's one of the best movies with John Travolta in it, and Kirstie Alley. It's the main character. His name is Mikey. That's why I have an attachment to it. It's a baby movie, another feel good movie. It's a comedy from the late 80s. Definitely another like good Saturday afternoon movie. If you want to get a double feature, you could do Fly Away Home and Look Who's Talking. I'm sure you can find both of them. You can stream them for free somewhere on the internet. So that's it. Happy Saturday. I know we started at 10. It's now 11:15. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't think that it was going to take me an hour to make these to this week's video. The Ethologists had a lot to cover. So thank you. Have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.